OCO, Maburiga, welcome to the Red Road East. I am your host, Fierce Truth Seeker. The Red Road East is an Indigenous TV program dedicated to archiving and preserving the history, legacy, and culture of the original peoples of the Americas east of the Mississippi River and the Caribbean. So, today's show, as y'all already know, is a continuation from the last show where we had the illustrious doctor and DNA analyst, guru, and diligent researcher, Dr. Fatou Diarra, on the show, decoding what they hide from our peoples with regards to DNA. And today, I also have my co-hosts with me. I have the wonderful clan mother and elder researcher, um, singer, drummer, dancer, author, you name it, it's on her resume. Activist, filmmaker, photographer, journalist, and 1,000 other things under her belt. Firebird, Grey Wolf, Osceola, Firebird.
OCO.
Yeah, and I also have my other co-host, Strong Bear Woman. Strong Bear. Okay, I muted your mic. Let me unmute it. Your mic is muted. I unmuted it on my end, so you'll have to unmute it on your end. Strong Bear Woman. Strong Bear. Oh, she must. I know she said she was going to get her food from the Uber, so maybe that's what she's doing. But anyway, so I have Firebird. Your camera's off, Firebird. I don't
On my
see it.
end, is showing it is on.
Oh yeah, yeah. All we see is a circle.
I see me behind the stage. I'll try to go out and come back in.
Okay, yeah, because I'm looking at you on YouTube, and you're not on there. Well, you have to click allow. Did you click allow um when you came in?
Yes.
Yeah, I had seen you before, but now you're not there. But anyway, we're gonna proceed because we have the doc um patiently waiting. And
Hi, OCO.
hey, OCO, Strong Bear
OCO.
Woman, how you doing? Can you we're getting your feedback. Can you turn off one of your devices that you have in the background? Strong Bear Woman. Hello? Hello? Strong Bear. Okay, I'm gonna have to mute Strong Bear's mic because we're getting too much fever. She's got one of her devices on. Um, anyway, okay, I'm gonna bring the doc on now. Doctor Fatou
Hey,
Diarra, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm great. Glad to be
Yeah,
back.
it's good to have you. Great to have you.
Always.
Yeah. So I know that right about now you've got your knives, your kitchen knives sharpening.
Oh yeah.
And
This
you're
should be
just
a good.
ready to
Oh yeah.
serve up a nice plate,
Yeah, the juicy part.
a nice dish for us.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't wait.
Mm-hmm.
So I know you said slide 88, but what I'll do is just in case it's not, I'll bring you to a few more slides before that
No
and you can
problem.
see if that
All
is
right,
okay.
all right.
Yeah.
Okay, wait a minute.
And
Yeah, I'm
hold
yes,
up.
I'm going to. Yeah, I'm here. I'm trying to turn it off.
Anyway, okay, I'm gonna bring the doc on now. Doctor Fatou. Yeah, I think you have two devices going, Jeanette. But your delay is like about like 3 minutes behind. I'm gonna have to mute you though because it's holding up the show. All right, there you go, Fiber. Oh, you just went back out. Let me see. Okay, I'm gonna share the screen so that you can see the slides now. Okay, let me see here. Present. Share screen. Share screen. Okay, let's see. Here we go. Share. All right.
Hmm. Right. Yes. Go further.
Okay.
We definitely covered this.
Okay. Let me know when to stop.
Uh okay. Uh Go back.
Okay.
You know what? Just to do a refresher, just go back a couple of more slides.
Couple more slides. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
About right there or a couple more.
Couple more. Mm-hmm. Go back. Go back. There you go. You can stop right there.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good. You can stop there.
Okay.
Okay, so we can pick it up.
Yeah.
All right. So I will. We covered the topic. We covered a few points during the first presentation. So I'm just going to review the key points that I made, and
Okay.
I would encourage your listening audience to go to part one. So part two will make sense. So what I did in part one was give a background of the genetic patterns of the people that we're calling Moors. Who were the Moors? So these were the key points that I made in part one. Who were the Moors? The description or images that we have of the Moors. What were the genetic groups that comprised the Moors? And we talked about the West African and the North African DNA, the genetic evidence of Moorish DNA in Europe from ancient times. We covered that. We talked about the genetic composition of various Moorish groups. And I showed Ghanaian DNA, Nigerian DNA, Senegambian DNA, the North African DNA, the Amizigh people, they have a particular type of pattern. We went over that. The relationship between the Moors and West Africans, which is pretty much where we are. And I'll pick up here. And what we will be covering the historical events that spread DNA to one region to the other, influencing Moorish DNA. We spoke about that. We spoke about the Bafour people, who were an ancient people in West Africa, and how the Amizigh people, commonly known as Berbers, but they prefer to be called Amizigh, how they migrated from the Horn and they went into the northwest northern part of Africa and merged with the antecedents who were the Bafour people. Now, the Bafour people became later on the groups that we known as the Mandi-speaking tribes, and many of those tribes form a good basis of the population that we see in West Africa. They belong to different ethnicities, you know, the Mandinkas, the Bambaras. There's so many, but all of them trace back to their antecedents called the Bafour people. We often don't hear about the Bafour people, and we tend to hear more about the Berbers and the Amizigh because there's this whole whitening of North Africa. Now, many of the Amizigh people are dark and they're indistinguishable from Malians. Some of them live in Mali and Niger and countries like that. But because you also have quite a few of them that are now mulatto, miscegenated, that that aspect of who they are is pushed to the forefront and advertised, sort of how, you know, it happens in Latin America. We always see the lighter, the more mulatto Cubans and Brazilians.
Right.
And when you go to the country, you are blown away as to how many brown, dark skinned
Yep.
people or Afro faces, hair and all that you see in those countries because they're not pushed to the forefront. Well, it's the same thing in
Mm-hmm.
North Africa. You have the mulatto and the lighter element of the Amizigh people that's pushed to the forefront politically and
Mm-hmm.
also in terms of media attention. But if you go to these places like Tunisia, Algeria, Niger, and Morocco, Libya, there are plenty of people that are indistinguishable from people from Nigeria, Mali, Senegambia,
Mm-hmm.
Guinea, and all of those places, Ghana. They are indistinguishable.
Right.
So there's a type of genetic pattern that these groups have. And when we start talking about Moors, you're talking about people that were comprised of the DNA from North Africa and West Africa. And when we look at the paintings, we will see I reviewed the paintings, which was based on what those artists actually saw. So we noticed that the Moors that were in the Iberian Peninsula, they tended to have longer faces. Some of them were dark, some of them were brown, but they tended to be more linear in their body builds. And when you look at the Moors, the paintings, let's say from Amsterdam, I showed an example how they looked. You can see the features were different, and they looked more like the people that you see in the Benin, Togo, Nigeria, Ghana area. So those tended to be from the northwest part of Europe, as opposed to the Iberian Moors, who had more of linear features. And that's because they were primarily derived from North Africa. So their features are different than the people from the regions of Benin and Togo, not in terms of color, but in terms of body build, height, and angles of the faces. Okay, so I also pointed that out. I'm going to go back here. I discussed this, but what I was discussing is that the reason why I presented the West African DNA in the breakdown, because we have to understand that West Africa was only recently inhabited. For many of these tribes recently went there. And if you look at many of the West African people's DNA and you break it down beyond what is typically presented to us, which is based on 6 to 8 generations, you will see they have ancient findings that will show they were in another part of the planet before they arrived in West Africa. So we should not be surprised that people with that phenotype was in the paintings of Europe, and there's a history as to how they were there. I also discussed in the very beginning of the presentation, the last time I was here, I discussed how there were different melanated people in Europe. When we talk about the Moors in the strictest definition, being North Africans, Amizigh, or some people just mean it to mean black. It has different definitions. But when we start talking about the people who were of the North African, West African genotype and phenotype, we have to also understand they were not the only melanated people. We also have, and I showed Otzi. Otzi was a brown man. He was a 5,000-year-old frozen mummy that was discovered in the Alp area. And when we look at his ancestral composition, it was very similar to that of someone from the Eastern Woodlands. And I actually showed in his GED match that his top population was to the Lumbee tribe, okay, who's an amalgamated tribe comprised of Siouan, Algonquian, Iroquoian, plus European elements all in one. So Otzi was a brown man that had a lot of genetic similarity to the people of the East Coast of North America genetically. And that lines up with historians such as what is it? Is it Mackey? I don't have the slide. Fierce.
Which slide?
You don't have to go back to the slide, but it's the historian. He wrote about ancient and modern Britons.
Ancient. Oh, David McRitchie.
David McRitchie. He talked about how ancient Americans colonized and went into the Mediterranean and Southern Europe and North Africa. And a good example of that was Otzi, because Otzi's whole genotype was different from the Moors who would come later. Yet these were all melanated people. You understand? So I was just giving that as an example, how there were different different melanated people in Europe. So when we talk about Moors, we're talking about one type of melanated people that came in a little bit later. But there was the Pygmies, there were the Khoisans, those were global populations. You had Otzi, who was very similar to the people of the East Coast of the United States. So I'm just explaining that what was happening in Europe also happened here in North America. It was happening pretty much throughout the Americas. You have more than one type of melanated group settling, and then there was mixing going on. So I showed that in part one. Now, let's move fast forward here. I discussed this slide before, but I'll discuss it again because this is pretty much near where we ended off last time. This is
which slide? The same one or the
oh yeah,
next
no,
one?
you can leave it right there. We'll start right here. And so basically, this is a map showing the different haplotypes of the sickle gene. And you have the Benin Togo type, which is the yellow. You have the Bantu type, which is the blue. And the significance of the map, it just demonstrates that where you do have the sickle trait and you have different genotypes of the sickle trait, it
Mhm.
demonstrates that the people that we're calling West Africans were not always in their current location. The fact that you have a predominance of that particular type of sickle trait in Southern Europe, North Africa, going into the Levant area, it's yellow there on that map. And then you have it in the present day area where we expect it to be the Benin Togo area, goes to show you that there was migration. Okay.
Mm. Mhm.
Now we can move to the next slide.
Okay. I like your hat, Firebird.
I bought it just for you for the show. See, I got some sunshine.
Yeah.
Cheer you up because I know you weren't feeling well with your cold.
Yeah. All right. So that's the next one.
Okay, can you enlarge that for me?
Okay. Let's see here. I think I can. Oh wait. Oh, I'm bugging. I hit the wrong thing. Let me see. That's that. Okay. Let me see. Um, Give me 1 second. I'm trying to remember how I did that. Let's see.
Is it that plus button right there next to the background up at the top? You see it right up there? Go up to the top where it says background. Mm-mm. You see transition layout background
Background.
at the ledger? Is it that plus sign right there? Go. Nope. Slide to the left. You see that background? Go to the left. Is it there? No, that's not it.
No. Um,
Uh,
I'll find it. Just give me a second.
yeah,
Let's see.
I saw Zoom.
Mm,
You saw it? Zoom right there. You had it.
This is it.
No, no, no.
Let me see.
Look, you had it right there. Slide. Go. Keep going to the right. Go to the right. No, go to the right.
To the right.
No, keep going to yeah. Keep moving. Keep moving. Keep moving. Keep moving. Keep moving. You're gonna see Zoom. Keep moving. You're almost there.
Ah, here we go. Let's see. Why is it not zooming? Oh, yeah. Let me see. Okay. Let's see. 100%. Maybe 100. Okay.
That's actually good. And you just slide it over so they can and
Right.
bring it down a little for me. Thank you.
Right.
A little more
Let me
down.
move over a little bit. Oh, a little more down. Okay.
Yeah, just move it down. You don't have to slide just down. There you go. All right.
Okay.
So
But
this is an example.
I can move it over so they could see this little circle thing there. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so this is someone from Ghana, 100% Ghanaian, and this is an example of what I'm talking about, which reflects ancient migration and the fact that West Africans were not always where they are now, and that region, in terms of when you start talking about history, recently has been inhabited in terms of moving down into their current regions. Now, this is a person from Ghana, and if you notice, what I have highlighted is the Red Sea. The Red Sea area, according to Eurogenes, represents the area around Egypt, Northeast Africa, the Arabian Peninsula, some parts of Sudan. Okay, and you will see that he has a small percentage there at 1.5%, and the smaller the percent in general, it means the further back in time. So that's a reflection of where some of his ancestors migrated from. Okay.
I'm glad you mentioned that point, and this is I want you to revisit that point later on in the discussion because I know Firebird had she's gonna ask you a couple of questions later on because a good dear friend of hers had recently gotten their DNA done, and his family, knows their indigenous lineage, and he was discouraged because he got the results and it showed that he was 1%, um, with the indigenous DNA. And I was explaining to her that whole significance of the smaller percentages, so you can revisit that later on in the discussion.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And if you slide down a little bit on the same individual,
Let me know when to
you can
stop.
see here the Northeast African. You can see the Northeast African. So I just said Red Sea also incorporates Northeast Africa, uh, parts of the Arabian Peninsula, a little bit of Sudan, and you can see Northeast Africa. So, when you speak to many of the people from Ghana, the elders, they will tell you, especially the Akans, the Aways, all of them talk about migrating from the east and from the north. The
Right.
Akans speak of migrating from the north in the northeast. And this is an example of how DNA supports their oral history. But what
Mm-hmm.
I also wanted to point out in this particular individual, although I did not highlight it, we see Amerindian 0.37. It's very tiny, but nevertheless there, because of course there was trading. Many of your listening audience knows that a lot of the staples in the African continent has its origins in the Americas, particularly the South
Right.
America area. Many of their foods is based with tomatoes, corn, cassava, peanuts, even tobacco came from the Americas, a good
Mm-hmm.
portion, yams. So there was trading back and forth, and the Asian derived natives migrated here a few thousand years ago. So they were here long enough to intermix with our ancestors, and for that DNA also to cross uh, across the Atlantic with Africans. So
Mm-hmm.
there was trade, and with trade comes intermingling and mixing. So all of this shows in their DNA. You can go to the next slide.
Okay.
And you can go up a little bit. Okay, this is another person from Ghana, and this is the MDLP22. So it's just pretty much what I was showing. You can see here with the MDLP22, she has almost 1.5% South American native. Again, when they talk about Amarin, this is based on the Asian population, the people who migrated out of Asia. That's who they're using as a reference, and she gets a little bit of that. Again, we're not surprised because, again, there was trading and there will be mixing. But can you slide down a little bit?
Okay.
We're going to look at something because the point is to show that there was a migration. Okay, look at the very bottom. You see here about 2.08% Near East. Near East will be the area of the Levant area. The Levant area outside of the African continent, which some people will include Turkey as part of it, but that's the Near East. So again, we see the evidence that a portion of the lineage of the West African is coming from the area we are calling the Middle East, Northeast Africa, all of those areas. You can go to the next slide. I'm sorry, you can skip that slide.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so again, this is, hold on, who's this person? Okay, yes, this is a Ghanaian. In fact, this is one of the same individuals, and you can see using the MDLP 22, when you break it down, you can see the secondary populations represent the founder population. So what we spoke about many times in my presentations. The founder populations were Pygmy, Khoisan, and I also mentioned, and I'll get into that again a little later, Bantu being the third oldest, and how these were global populations. They're not exclusive to the African continent. That's what that's the intent, to make you think that. But I've said this before and I'll keep saying it. We now know that Polynesians have 20 to 25% Bantu DNA, and that DNA, Otzi had it, the 5,000-year-old mummy. I showed it on other presentations, and I believe I showed it as well in my first presentation in his secondary populations, which would be his primordial populations. He had the Pygmy, and he also had the Bantu, and I showed it in my Lebanese sample. So in other words, pretty much when you're talking about ancientness to the land, to the earth, to the planet, we're talking about having founder populations, and that would be Khoisan, Pygmy, and then next comes the Bantu. And I'm going to say this before anyone corrects me. I know Bantu is not considered a politically correct term, but what I'm really referring to is the genetic similarity to the people of the southern region of Africa, not necessarily South Africa, but including South Africa, but stretching from the border of Nigeria, Cameroon, across into some parts of Ethiopia, going down to Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Botswana, Malawi, Madagascar, Angola, you name it, that whole area. There's a genetic similarity that those people have, and I'm going to call it Bantu. It's a genetic similarity. It doesn't mean your ancestors migrated from there, but we will find that DNA is also global after the Pygmy and the Khoisan. That's the DNA that I'm referencing, and that's the DNA that those of us in the Americas have the most similarity to. This is why on many of these tests, we will get matches to Bantu, Kikuyu, and Kenya or My Heritage, although they did some crazy updates. That's another topic. But you will see this Lemba, Bantu, matches to Kenya, and a lot of us don't understand what that is. And that's just genetic similarity to the people of those regions. And it will also show up on GEDmatch. Okay, so this is a person from Ghana. Again, I'm showing that the primordial aspect of her DNA shows the pygmies, different types of pygmies. We can slide down a little bit. We're going to look at some other things as well.
I have a question before you go on, so I don't forget this
Yes,
particular question.
yes.
They migrated a lot of sub-Saharan people. Was this a healthy migration or forced migration due to climate or war? Would you know why so many migrated?
From the history, it seems to be a combination. You had also the drying up of the Sahara. So you had a movement down into more fertile areas. That was one aspect that was going on. You also had the movement of wars going on in the area of the Near East, and you had migrations as well because of those wars that were taking place. You also had Africans that did not want to convert to Islam, and you had the Islamic Africans also, putting the sword on them to convert. So you had different conflicts leading to migrations, and you also had the pressure of just the environmental change of the drying up of the Sahara, and the need to move to more fertile lands. So you had a few things going on.
Thank you so much. I was wondering why so many of one particular people historically were moving, and a lot of the DNA studies reveals that the person might have sub-Saharan bloodline, and you just explained it. Thank you.
You're welcome. So this individual, if you look towards the right, and I have it highlighted, you see the STE7. The STE7 on Eurogene stands for an ancient marker of European. That's apparently found in high concentrations in the Sardinian people. The Sardinians, although they're fair, they are considered a very old ancient people of Europe. And you can see here that she possesses some of the markers. And then you also see, of course, Bantu. And I highlighted the Bantu because, just like I always mention, the Pygmies, the Khoisan, that can show up as San. You will also see Bantu being the older part of the West African. So the Bantu is older than the West African. The West African is not as old as the Bantu. The West Africans are actually relatively young. Okay, we tend to think of Africans as pretty much this monolithic people. They're not all of the same age. The people of the East
Right.
are older than the people of the West. West Africans are the young ones. They're not
Mm.
ancient at all. So we can move to the next slide.
Okay.
Okay, so this is this is the Ghanaian sample again, and you can see again evidence of the migration from the east and the north to their present location. So you look at her secondary populations, and what do you have? Luia. Luia is a Bantu type people from Kenya. You have the Maasai and Nilotic people. You have the Somali, that speaks for itself, the Ethiopian. Now you have the Moroccan, the Mozambique Berber, based on the populations that's there, the Algerian, the Bedouin, which are tribes in the Arabian Peninsula. So I'm basically giving you an example of the different areas because DNA never goes away. That's based on the population that's there now, whether they're miscegenated with other things or not. Still, she still has some of the markers of those people in her DNA because her ancestors migrated from the north and from the east. And we saw in the previous slide, even from Europe, from Southern Europe as well. She had ancestors migrating from there. You can move to the next slide. This is another Ghanaian, and you can see he has a little bit of the Somali, the Ethiopian, the different types of Ethiopian groups, the Oromo, Amhara, Tigray, and when you go down, you even see a little bit of Pima.
Mm.
Okay,
Mm.
Mm.
you see the North American Amerindian, you see the Sudanese.
Mm.
Okay, so regardless of how dark or how pure somebody looks, these migrations took place. There was crossing, there was trading. You see that Mayan right there? You see, there was trading back and forth. That's what that represents. But the older part of their DNA migrated from the east and from the north. That's what I'm showing. You see the little Sudanese there peeking up at the bottom. That's all I'm demonstrating. So when we see these paintings of faces that look West African and North African, understand that they weren't always where they were, where they weren't always where they are now. They weren't always there.
Yeah,
Okay.
and that's it's interesting that you mentioned that mine and Pima, um, because if you know about David Hatchett Childress, he talks about in one of his books that the people in West Africa, he said that there was a cataclysm that happened about 10,000 years ago where um, the people in West Africa around the area of Nigeria and that general surrounding area had come from Central America. He said that in his book.
Interesting.
I'll send
Yeah.
you the when I find it. I'll send it to you.
Yes, yes. See, I know you mentioned it to me before, and I never forgot that. You know.
And there you have it, right there in the DNA.
Mm-hmm. You can go to the next slide.
So, in other words, see, it brings me to a conversation that I had with Firebird earlier. A lot of people are getting discouraged getting the DNA tests, but as I was telling her, it's the interpretation of the DNA.
Right.
Yeah,
Well, the dishonesty, they're not telling the client
Oh, they leave.
what
They
it,
leave.
they don't break it down what it really means.
That's right. That's exactly it. So this is the DNA results of a Lebanese individual, and these are the smaller portions of his DNA. So the main part of his DNA just reflects where he's currently from. All right, Lebanon. So we're not surprised about that. Levantine, that's what he is. But let's look at the smaller portion because that's what he was before he became the miscegenated individual that he is today, modern
right,
day Lebanese. So
exactly.
when you look at the smaller portion, okay, so this actually reflects aspect of the history in the region. The Central Asian reflects the Turks that occupied during the Ottoman Empire. You had the occupation of that region for 800 years. So I would expect to see that. But when you go further down,
Hold on.
you see
Further
that
or right there?
right. You see that Senegambian. You see that Senegambian. Okay,
Hmm.
so when you look at that DNA, if you don't understand that North Africans and all of those people have those DNA markers within their ancestral composition, you automatically start thinking that it literally means you are from that exact location.
Hmm.
And the reason why a lot of people get tricked into thinking that these tiny markers that say Ghana, Senegambia, and all of that literally means those areas. The reason why is because everyone else's DNA is closed off in a category called a genetic community. So his genetic community is Lebanese. We don't really see what's inside that genetic community because what happens, this is all computer generated. And so once it recognizes his genetic code pattern, it allocates him to the region that he's from, which is Lebanon. But enclosed into that category is a combination of different genetic groups that we don't get to see. And that's what makes it confusing to the layperson. And as far as I'm concerned, it was designed to be confusing. So this
Right.
is why the average person today is not aware that the Polynesian has on average 20 to 25% African, so-called sub-Saharan African DNA, more related to the Bantu population. The reason why that's not known is because when they take a DNA test, it recognizes who they are and allocates them to the category called Fijian, Samoan, Hawaiian. And so when you see that, you say, well, that's what they are. But what's inside of that DNA? What's the components inside of that DNA? That's what the average person doesn't have privy to. And that's the trick. So the only people whose DNA components are exposed would be the people in the Americas and the African continent. So it gives a false impression that the only people who possess African DNA are the actual Africans themselves and the people in the United States, Jamaica. You understand the trick? But
Hmm.
everybody, so in other words, when you take a DNA test and they have these so-called, these African American communities on ancestry DNA, like they'll say like Louisiana, East Border, Texas, African American community. For people who've taken that DNA test, they know what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
What they've done is they will tell you, oh, you have a certain percentage of Nigerian, Cameroon, Congo. That's their Bantu reference, pardon me. Where everyone else, they don't do that. They just say, this is what you are. So they very well could have said Louisiana, East Border, Texas, Indigenous American. They did not have to open up the category and reveal what was in it. They didn't do that for the Hawaiian. They didn't do that for the Samoan. They didn't do it for the Lebanese. They are only doing that for people in the Americas.
Right.
So it gives the impression that we're the only people that possess that African DNA when everyone possesses it.
Exactly.
And as we move on, we'll see. So this individual who has 0.4, he will have more than that because his genetic community is Levantine. You don't get to see what's inside of that. You see what slips out, which is the 0.4. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I know that the Afrocentric looking Hawaiians, they were very much discriminated against. Once, I guess, after the Japanese invaded, they were put in a category called the Royal
The
Hawaiians.
Royal Hawaiians. Yep,
Mm-hmm.
that's right. The Royal Hawaiians. Going back
And
to
they
King
were
Kamehameha and
discriminated
all of
and
them.
separated.
Yep.
Well, the people out of the Pacific Islands, we possess, I don't want to move from the topic, but we possess similar DNA to them. Actually, our original DNA is most similar to their DNA. We are a combination of this sub-Saharan African, primarily Bantu, mixed with Southeast Asian, which is the Austronesian. That is actually the DNA that they possess. The only difference is they're more Southeast Asian because of their location, and they're less Bantu. We're more Bantu, a little less, and we're less Southeast Asian. That is
Right.
why so many of our people resemble them, and they resemble us.
Right.
Unless we have a lot of Moorish admixture, and they came in later and intermingled with us. So we'll get into that. I don't want to delay. You can move to the next slide.
Okay.
Right. So this is the MDLP 22 of the Lebanese, and you can see the column on the right would be his primordial, and you can see these are the groups that comprise him. So you can see the Egyptian, the Turks, the North African Libyan, the Yemen, the Mozabite Berber, and you can see he also has similarity to the Dominican, and I'm going to explain that as well. You can go down. You see the Bambara, those are people from Mali. Again, what would he be doing with that DNA? Because at one point they were in his region. All right. The Brong, which is an Akan type people, Yoruba, Igbo, Mandinka. What is he doing with West African? You see my point? Now I wanted to say I didn't highlight it, but you could also see African American.
Mm-hmm.
You see Puerto Rican. What would he be doing with that DNA? Because I don't know how much of your listening audience knows this, but the people who match the ancient Phoenician bones the closest on the planet are the Lebanese. So even though they've been miscegenated, they are the direct descendants of the Phoenicians. So the Phoenicians came back and forth to the Americas, and you can see the evidence right there in his DNA.
What time period did they come to the Americas? Would you
If
be
my
able to say?
memory, if my memory serves me correct, wasn't like 300 and something AD, 600
Okay.
and something AD, Fierce?
Um, I have to go and revisit my notes. I don't like to put information out there without the accurate dates.
It definitely was in the AD period.
Can you tell me, were they in the United States proper or the Caribbean area?
It seems to me they were anywhere there was a shoreline because they were traders.
Yeah, they were
Okay.
seafarers.
They were seafarers and traders. So
Okay.
that's why you see, look, the Puerto Rican, you see all of that as a reflection of where his forefathers would have been. North America. We even get markers to, well, I'm jumping the gun. You can move to the next slide. So what I wanted the audience to pay attention to was that those West African markers that reflects migration on the part of West Africans. Remember, I showed earlier how the smaller percentages show the ancestors of West Africans coming out of the Levant area, the Near East, the Red Sea marker, the Near East markers. You can see it right there. So when something is true, it shows up in more than one way. It's just not going to be in one way.
Right.
Okay, you can go to the next slide.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is an article talking about Black Londoners through time. It's an article on the African Romans, and you will see this is pretty much where you start seeing the origin of people with West African type DNA in Northwest Europe. And it goes back to the Roman period. That's not to say there weren't melanated people before then. As I said before, there were different melanated people in Europe. But now we're talking about the genesis of the people that we're calling Moors in Northwest Europe as we know them, not in the Iberian Peninsula, but in Northwest Europe. It has its genesis from the Roman Empire. You can move to the next slide. So this is an article talking about Up Down Girl. She basically is a 10-year-old girl that was found buried in Kent, 7th century England. And she was 33% Isan Yoruba DNA. And they attributed that to her grandfather, who was said to be a noble. And she was buried with two of her aunts who were 100% Northwest European. So this goes to show you that there was that DNA in that area, Yoruba, West African type DNA in that area, that you had people with that DNA in that area. You can move to the next slide. They're talking about what I just said. Next slide.
Okay.
You can move that down so I can read that.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. So this is an article from the Irish Times that talks about how there's a small percentage of Irish people that seem to show traces of Berber and Tuareg heritage, which there seems to be some sort of link. Well, we're not surprised about that, okay, because that's going to show up later on. And it's not just there's more willingness to there's a willingness to admit North African connection, and I don't see that there's that willingness to associate with Africans who are the pheno and genotype of West Africa, but that fact that they are there as well, and in the Irish Ireland area. So we will see that as we move on. But I first wanted the audience to see that this is an acknowledgement of there being matches and influence of Berber and Tuareg lineage and some of the Irish people, although it's a small percentage. And the Tuaregs are a type of Amizigh Berber people. You can move to the next slide. So we're going to keep that in mind. Slide down. Okay. So what moving forward, what I'm now showing is the evidence that this DNA that we when we talk about North and West African DNA, I'm going to show that people in Europe still have tiny traces of it. And where you see tiny traces of it, that means that those people were there at one point. Okay. So we have to think, even though that DNA is being allocated to the people in these current locations, why would these people who are nowhere near them geographically have their DNA? So when you slide up, you'll see that this is a person from Italy, and this person has trace DNA from this region. Ghanaian, Liberian, Sierra Leone, which they group 23andMe groups it, but you can see he has or she has a little bit of the West Asian, North African, but you also see the West African there. And this is an individual from Italy. Okay, you can move to the next slide. Again, this is an example, another Italian, and you can see if you slide down, Senegambian DNA. So here I'm just showing you the type of DNA vestiges that are being left back, even though a lot of that original population that was there, the darker population, was chased out or bred out or a combination of both, you can see the vestiges. So I'm showing improving the genetic patterns of these Moors, and it shows up a little bit in the population that's there today as trace markers. Okay, next slide. This is someone from Portugal, and it's the same thing. When you slide on down, what do you see? Now we see the West Asian and the North African. And by the way, the North African is based on the miscegenated population there that's there now. But what peaks out? Can you slide down a little bit?
A little more.
Yeah. What do you have there? A little Nigerian peeking out. This is someone who's from Portugal, Azores Island. Okay, so again, these are the vestiges of the Moors that were there. A little bit of their DNA peeks out. The West African and the North African. All
I
right.
had a friend from I had a friend from Sicily. He had an afro like Angela Davis. I mean, it wasn't curly, it was nappy. Nappy hair.
Oh, that don't
And
surprise me.
No.
oh, and if he covered his head with a scarf, you would think he was completely white until he took that scarf off.
You can go to the next slide.
Okay.
So this is someone from Great Britain. And you can see going down, there's a general category on 23andMe called General West African. And you can see the person got a little bit of that. So again, all proof of a population that was once there. You can go to the next slide. This is someone from Sicily, and again, I'm just showing the pervasive nature. Your listening audience can just randomly go to Reddit and look at people's results, and you'll see I'm not cherry picking. This is very common. to see with Europeans. Of course, it's, you know, something you will tend to see in your Southern Europeans. But the truth of the matter is, if you look at GED matches of even Northwest Europeans, where all percentages are shown, you will see that although the percentages will be tend to be less than the Southern European, those African percentages are still there, even if they're very minute. Okay, you can slide that down. This is someone from Sicily. Then you can see the Ghanaian there. Okay. All right.
Mhm.
So you know, what I'm building to is just because those DNA patterns show up in our DNA tests, you have to think outside the box. It doesn't
Yep.
mean the person is straight from Ghana. That's what I'm showing, okay? All right,
Mhm.
because I also showed you that the Ghanaians at one time were not even in Ghana. I
Mm.
showed the Lebanese in his primordial populations, he had Akan markers, he had Igbo markers, Yoruba markers, Mandinka markers, in addition to other populations. So these populations were not always in their current location. I can't emphasize that enough. You can go to the next slide. So this is someone from Andalusia, Spain. And, you know, that's what her primary DNA is. And if you go down, slide down, of course, she gets the North African, and then boom, you have the little Nigerian there. Now, let me just say this about North African. I said this in the first presentation. When you see North African, a modern day North African, in terms of what that means, getting that as a genetic result, that is a modern construct that reflects a mixture of West African, Southern Europe, and Levantine people all mixed into one, and they create a genetic community. Those people mix over time, and that's called North African. That does not mean all North Africans are miscegenated, but the geneticists use the miscegenated population in
Mhm.
those regions as their reference panel. So
Yep.
when you see North African in a DNA test, it is a reflection of the miscegenated populations that they've tested. They didn't go to the dark Moroccans, to the dark skinned Algerians. They went to the miscegenated people and used them as that reference panel, and that is a North African. But what's inside of a North African's DNA is nothing but a West African mixed with the Southern European with Eurasian elements from the Levant. These are nothing but genetic communities. And I showed that with the individual from Lebanon. That's a genetic community because, as you can see, his composition included North West African, and he had Turkish, and he had all these other elements coming in to make him what he is today. These are genetic communities. Okay, you can go to the next slide.
Okay.
Right. So you can see this is someone from, you have to slide that down a little,
Oh.
from France. And you can see the person gets trace Eritrean. You know, you had it already. You showed it already. You can move to the next slide. Okay. So this is an individual from Southern England, England. And let's slide down. He also has some Irish and Scottish ancestry. Again, this is all based on the population, the paler population who's there now.
Okay. I got to interrupt for a second. We're nearing the wrap up point. Because we did want to do some Q&A. Um, we may have to do a part 3.
We will. Okay. Let me just. I think I'm almost done with this.
Okay. Okay.
You could slide this down. And where do you see Benin Togo 1%? And this is someone with English and Irish roots. Okay, so these are vestiges of who was there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I'm just curious to know what's the next slide, so I know where to pick off. Okay, that's a good segue. That's a
Okay.
good for part 3.
Okay.
Because now I'm moving into when I come back, I will deal with how that DNA was transferred over here to the colonies and to the Caribbean.
Wow,
Nice.
that's going to be good.
Right,
Mm-hmm.
right. So I showed the different steps. I analyzed the DNA, who the Moors were, what their genetic components were like. I showed the migration of these West Africans, where they originally came from. And I gave the evidence that they came out of the Levant area, East Africa. They even had ancestors out of Southern Europe. I gave you examples of Europeans today and how many of them still have genetic markers of these West Africans who clearly had to be in those regions at some point, that they still have vestiges on tiny percentages.
Mm-hmm.
So now, the next time I come back, I will deal with how that DNA ended up over here and how we have the genetic patterns and the proof to show that it did not come directly from Africa. I'm not saying there wasn't a slave trade, but the DNA shows that a great contributor to our ancestral composition that came out of Europe.
Mm. Nice.
Okay, so that's what I'll deal with when I come back.
Beautiful. Beautiful. So y'all heard it. If anyone has any questions for the doc, leave your questions in the comment. And if you also would like to join in on the discussion and ask her a question in person, leave your email and we'll bring you on, not for too long because we're past the wrap up point, but you have about 2 minutes to do so. um, I know Firebird, I know you had some questions as well.
Um,
If you
every slide I had a question. I was ready.
mm, yeah.
You know
Did you
me.
take Yeah, did you take any notes of any questions that you might
Well,
because you wanted to ask?
right at this point, I wanted to know if the doctor herself believes everyone is um, roots genetically or from Africa, like Dr. Spencer Wells.
I'm not sure I understand the question. If I believe everyone is from
He
Africa?
believes, Spencer Wells believes all life began in Africa. Everyone is a descendant of one of the countries of Africa. Do you have the same belief system?
No, I don't, because when I look at the DNA of Africans, I'm seeing that they're coming from someplace else. I'm
Hmm.
seeing Europe, Asia. I didn't get into it here, but when I analyzed even deeper, the Ghanaians and the Nigerians, they even have lineage out of Asia. It matches to people from Cambodia. And, so it's hard for me to say that Africa was their starting point.
Hmm.
When I
Right.
see so
So
much,
could it be a thing that they went back and forth? People.
that is possible. That is also possible. I mean, I've read about back migrations, but I can't stand on just that they originated out of Africa when I'm seeing that what made them their current what made them their current group is a migration from all these different areas. I
Different
just
ways, yeah.
I'm looking at, and I showed it to you. I showed it to you. You saw
Yeah.
Southern Europe. You saw East Africa. You saw North Africa. You
Mm,
saw the Levant. I just chose not to get into the Cambodian and all of those other matches. You
mm-hmm.
understand, the matches to Tajikistan. I saw all of these things in their DNA. So I'm looking at everything coming into Africa.
Yeah.
So I can't. I don't see the evidence of it, and I'm not saying I'm seeing everything, but I don't see the evidence of it.
And I know that you are not being partial when you say that, because I know, Doc, that you are half African yourself,
Right?
so you're not being biased.
No.
Yep.
So we can conclude that and open up a can of worms now.
Hmm.
Are you going to write a book, Doctor?
That's on my agenda real soon.
Yeah, she's working on it now. I've been prodding her to
Yeah.
write the book, so she's on it now.
Yes.
I guess I'll
Oh
be
yeah.
buying it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I
All
mean, it
right.
makes so much sense that people will go back and forth, not just one way.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
That makes so much more sense.
Oh yeah. Wow. Well, Doc, I thank you so much. Let me see if anybody in the chat expressed interest in joining for brief questioning. No. So I guess then we'll continue it on part 3. And you left off on a real good note. You gave him a nice cliffhanger.
Hmm.
And yeah, this was definitely a great presentation.
Thank you.
Yeah. All
Yeah, I
right.
can't wait for the next one.
Hmm.
Yeah. Me either.
Me.
Yeah. All right. So on that note, I'm gonna close out the show. Well, actually, not close out the show. I'm gonna close out this segment of the show. Um, and Firebird and I um, have a couple of things to cover with regards to the upcoming parade. I'm going to cover that for about 10 minutes. Um, and
Okay.
then we'll close out. Doc, you're welcome to stay on, or if you need to go, you can go. But we just need to cover a couple of things for a moment before.
I will be listening, but I'm just gonna leave the studio, but I'll listen.
Okay.
All right.
All righty.
All right. Nice seeing you, Miss.
All right. Thank you, Doctor.
Okay.
Okay, Doc.
All righty.
Yeah. Oh, that was wonderful. That was wonderful.
Definitely.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
Firebird, you've been getting busy. You've been hustling, hustling, hustle hard, hustle, hustle,
I'm
hustle,
always
hustle hard.
hustling.
Yeah, you've been
I'm
hustling.
always hustling. But
You've been
I got this. I got this hat for you to bring you some sunshine in your life.
yeah,
But
I
you
love
sound
it.
so you sound so sick today. I felt so bad.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
told Strong Bear Woman, I said he's sick. She thought maybe it was due to you traveling, but I
Oh
said
no,
no. He
no.
was fine when he came back,
Well, you know
unless it's
me.
lingering.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
Well, I I'm very adept in, not to tote my own, horn or anything, toot my own horn, but I'm pretty adept at my knowledge of health, wellness, and natural healing modalities. So, I pretty much know how to heal myself, you know. So I'm feeling a lot better.
I've been waiting for that book too.
Oh man.
I'm
Yep.
waiting.
Okay. Yeah, I'll put that in the
It's much
works.
needed.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
much needed, even if it's
Wow.
a pamphlet.
Okay.
You know,
Okay. Yeah. I think I'll do that.
yeah, please. It's much
Okay.
needed.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wanted to
Um.
say hi to Awanasa. I don't know if she left, but um,
Yeah. She was in the. I think she's still there. Um.
hi Awanasa.
Hey, cuz we don't know if she's still there. I'm pretty sure she is there. I know she. If she is
I
there,
don't.
she'll shout us again in the chat. Yeah. But yeah, you've been really at it with the parade. Um,
Yeah,
with how the
working on my
parades.
portfolio and
Mm-hmm.
getting ready for some filmmaking over the winter. And but
Yeah.
the parade that's a year in the making. You know, for one
Mm-hmm.
day.
Oh
It's
yeah.
gathering people together, getting the words out, making
Mm-hmm.
flyers, meeting people, inviting people,
Yeah.
uh, trying to get some type of sponsorship, um, writing up media kits and uh, press release.
Mm-hmm.
It's not easy.
You're right.
It's not easy at all, but it's worth
Mm-hmm.
it. I mean, like I refer back to last year. Look how many people came out in that flooding, pouring rain,
In that
and
pouring rain.
yes, yes, they came, and it was wonderful.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
uh, a few groups wrote me they want to be in it, so it's growing. We need more advertisement. We need more people to pass the word,
Mm-hmm.
but we're doing it, and it's a wonderful feeling to see so many tribal people coming together,
Yeah.
other than a powwow setting, in the
True.
streets of New
True.
York. It's
Mm-hmm.
just wonderful. And I thank you and Strong Bear Woman for your dedication and helping me, Chief Carla Alexander and the well wishers. I just thank everybody.
You're
So
quite
the
welcome.
parade is Saturday, October 19th, from 12 to 3. Line up 8 o'clock in the morning. Ceremony starts 9 o'clock. We'll have some entertainment. We'll be dancing in the street, playing music, doing some intertribals, some round dances. Um, we'll have someone doing opening prayer. This year, I'm bringing my spiritual bundle to do the blessing of the circle and the people. I should be bringing my sacred pipe. It's not. Some people think it's peace pipe. It's not a peace pipe. It's a spiritual ceremonial pipe. Um, and we'll be blessing the grounds and just having a good time after that. So I encourage your audience and your friends, co-workers, and allies to come on down and join us October 19th, which is Saturday, uh, East 26th Street, Madison Square Park. We line up. We end up on 17th Street and Broadway. And we're very excited once again to see everybody. And hopefully the following year, we'll probably try to do a community picnic and some other type of activities and keep the momentum going.
Mm-hmm.
Each year we get stronger.
Yeah.
So I thank you for this short time. And
Oh, quite
hopefully,
welcome.
huh?
You're quite welcome, and we're gonna do it again very soon.
Yes, I'm in the process of making a new set of flyers out to distribute for those on my YouTube channel. Maybe you can put it on your channel. I would appreciate that
Okay.
in your community room.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll just enjoy ourselves the best that we can. We were going to try to have a street festival. We paid our permit money to register, but we have not heard back from the city. You know how that goes.
Mm,
But we're going to keep on trucking, you know.
yeah.
The police have been going through a lot with other parades and nonsense in the streets and also protests for rights. So it's not easy for any of us.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I know.
And I know your dad is going to be a special guest. He's on the flyer.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you have any other flyers there that you could
Not
show.
not handy. You didn't forewarn me.
Okay. Keep everything nearby.
Yes, it's kind of hard to do the way this
Yeah, I
place
understand.
is
I'm
situated.
being sarcastic,
Yeah.
but I know you have to
My
go
place
to
is
work
very small.
tomorrow.
Yep,
Huh?
yep. Oh yeah, you're right about that.
So I'm gonna let you go. I'm gonna pop me a bag of popcorn and watch a movie and think some more things out for the
Mm,
parade. And
mm-hmm.
I'll be calling more people on the weekend, which
Okay.
is tomorrow. So let me know when you want to do another show or presentation.
Okay.
I'll be hitting more harder this winter, doing more shows and presentations and media this winter. You
Okay.
know, so yeah, you have to model for me one of my portraits for my
Okay.
portfolio.
Sounds good. I'll do that.
And
I'll
we're
do that.
building. So I thank everybody that came on board tonight to honor you and the doctor, and to honor me as well by listening to me. So I love
Great.
you. Tell your wife I said
Love you
hi.
too. All righty. Yeah, I sure will. Love you too, and
Okay.
all the best.
Okay, hon. So
Okay.
done and done.
Donna Da. I'm gonna close out the show now.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, y'all. So another wonderful show, and I see that the like button hasn't moved. So that either tells me that, we have a lot of people who are looking at the show and, they're not paying attention to what I'm saying on the screen or what I'm saying, out of my mouth, or that the majority of the listeners are, just haters being nosy to hear what we're talking about. And they're not going to hit the like button. Okay. So, you know, if you're not one of the haters who happen to be nosy and just trying to spy on us and hear what we're talking about, please hit the like button. It doesn't cost you anything. Okay. But, let's see. Let me refresh the screen. I hope that I'm wrong. Let me refresh the screen and see. Okay. All right. I refreshed the screen. And okay, the numbers have moved. All right. I apologize. Okay. We do have some love out there. But anyway, uh that's gonna do it. And okay, we have another person just joined in right at the tail end. Hey, how you doing? All right. And let's see. That person is that we're joined with now is Sagittarius Jones. Thanks for tuning in, Sagittarius Jones. Yeah. And yeah, so that's it. We're wrapping up now. And yeah, peace, Sag. And we're pretty much wrapping the show now. I don't know if you're just tuning in. You can, after this is over, you can replay it and see it from the beginning. Okay. Um, but I thank all who did join in. And there will be a part 3 to this discussion because it's a very extensive topic of discussion. And, you can't fit it all in one show. you know. But the doc is thorough in what she does, and it takes time to break all of this stuff down to where everyone can understand it. Okay, so let's see. Okay, been listening for a while. Okay, that's good. That's good. All right. So okay, so and if you didn't get a chance to hit the like button, do so. But if you've been listening for a while, I'm pretty sure that you have. Um, but yeah, so we're gonna close out now. I wish we had more time, but unfortunately we don't. And I'll see y'all on the next show. I'll advertise in advance like I did this one so that y'all can have a heads up as to when we'll do the next show. And before we have the doc on again, it'll more than likely be myself and Firebird. I have Firebird on giving you updates on the parade. And hopefully I'll see a lot of you at this year's parade, which a lot of you do come to the parade. And I thank y'all, because a lot of y'all come up and tell me, hey, I found out about this parade by watching your show and we're here. So, and I thank y'all for that. Okay. So on that note, I'm going to close out. Okay. And yeah, it's really been a pleasure. I know I've been off the air for a while, doing the lives and stuff like that, and I apologize. But my work schedule is very, very, very crazy. And it keeps me, it really keeps me busy. Okay. And but I'm gonna try my best, to do shows more regularly. Okay, so on that note, I'm gonna sign out saying Doda da Gaha Yi. Okay, until the next time. Okay, Sedame. Ayo.